will there be an early access version of the game or a beta?
Yes.
There you can say tomorrow, and everyone would be pleased. So
We are only allowed yes or no.
Will it be tomorrow? Yes.
Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with some more Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord developer blog coverage. And yes, you heard that right, there will be a early access or beta version of Bannerlord at some point. They did not confirm a date, so we have no idea when that will be. But we know that there will be one now that the head and CEO and director and every other title he has of Tale Worlds has confirmed it. So I'll have a link in the description for that little clip there, but it's from a Twitch interview that they did. And so yeah, we do know now that they plan to release the game in an unfinished state at some point. I can't imagine how much longer it would be. From another video that I covered, which was an interview they did with some German YouTubers called Rocket Beans at Gamescom, we do know that at least they said they have basically finished and polished the early game. And a lot of people misunderstood this as like the game is a third done because they still need to do the mid and the late game, but no. The early game is just the gameplay experience of the player as a very low-level character, or very early on in the campaign. That is to say that the mechanics of the game, the basis of the game, the engine, the textures, the objects, the scenes, much of that, if not all of it, has been built. Because you cannot finish and polish a particular section of the game without having the foundation there. And the foundation stuff is hopefully done at this point. I'm sure they're still tweaking it because with most developers, they work in teams, and those teams, even if the engine is finished, they're not just going to stop working and take a permanent lunch break. They're going to keep polishing that until release day. So I'm sure that stuff is still being tweaked and refined, but for the most part, it should be mostly feature complete. And we should be seeing them move from the early game to the mid and the late and polishing those experiences. So how much longer it'll be, who can say? I've speculated before, and those speculations have been wrong, so I'm not going to speculate again here, but I don't think it will be too much longer before we see at least like an early access or beta version of the game. So that's big news, confirmation that we'll be seeing the game in early access or beta. With that out of the way, let's dive into this last week's developer blog that came out on the 23rd of August, which was all about the character screen. The character screen is something that we saw in the video I covered from that interview. And I went in as much depth as I could on it there without having any real explanation on it. So we'll be getting a little bit of explanation on it here, although I wasn't super impressed with the depth that they covered it in. And I also found myself scratching my head at some of the decisions they've made with it. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say about it, but let's go ahead and talk about it first, and then we'll discuss that. So, as most of you will already know, we've been at Gamescom this week showcasing the single-player sandbox campaign of Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. We've been reading comments and feedback, and we noticed that quite a few people are interested in seeing some of the different screens and deeper parts of the game that are visible in the videos that are coming out from our guests at the booth. So with that in mind, for this week's blog, we thought we could show the character screen and explain the different elements of that and how character development works in Bannerlord. I don't know why it took them Gamescom to realize that. People have been begging for information on the single-player campaign for months, if not years now. So yeah, I mean, people wanted to see this for a long time. It's great that they finally got around to it. But I mean, the fact that the demo at Gamescom was a lot of, well, basically everybody's first sighting of this particular thing, which is fairly important. Like, you're going to be spending a lot of time at this screen. This is how you level up your characters, how you do progression, and not just for yourself, but also for your companions. So it's fairly integral to gameplay, at least in single player. but this is the first time we're seeing it because I guess it took months, if not years, of begging for us to finally get it. So here it is. I'm going to click on over here and just kind of go through it. Well, no, let's read through theirs first because they kind of give us a little tour of it as well, and I don't want to basically double up on that. So on the left side of the screen, you can see the character skills. They're referring to this here where it says skills. To improve these skills, you need to perform the associated task or action. If we take one-handed as an example, successfully landing attacks with one-handed weapons will increase the one-handed skill. Once you increase these skills enough, you gain access to different perks, which you can select to give your character an extra edge in the game. So let's take a look at these skills. We can see that they are different from Warband, and the best way to think of these is sort of as an amalgamation of the skills and proficiencies from Warband. Many of the skills have been merged into other skills or given their own separate tree, or in some cases eliminated entirely in the favor of perks. So we have the combat skills first, which are one-handed, which is exactly what you would expect, you know, your ability to fight with swords, daggers, one-handed axes, and so on and so forth. Two-handed, which is going to be, you know, two-handed swords, two-handed axes, Dane axes, and stuff like that. And then pole arms. So those are your melee weapons, which are in this kind of like goldish color. And then we have our ranged weapons, bows, crossbows, and throwing in this sort of orangey color. Now, crossbows having their own skill is new. They've always had their own proficiency. And in Warband, they were dictated entirely by proficiency. Bows had the power draw skill, and so you needed to level up power draw as well as your bow proficiency to be good at bows. Crossbows were valuable because they didn't require that skill investment. You could spend those skill points elsewhere, but still be good at crossbows just by using them and gaining that proficiency. And that sort of reflected the real world mechanics where bows required a lot of training, crossbows were somewhat point and shoot. Here we're not seeing that, although we sort of are. I'll explain that in a little bit. But anyways, those are the three ranged combat skills. Crossbows do have their own thing now. Then we get into riding, athletics, and tracking. I guess these are more of like your non-combat physical skills. And I guess it's worth mentioning that with all of these, they function as the example given, where successfully landing one-handed attacks levels your one-handed skill. I don't know how you successfully ride, but in one of the videos out of Gamescom, we do see somebody leveling up their riding skill in combat. So being mounted on a horse during a fight and doing something will level up your riding skill. Now, moving around on the overland map, I don't believe will do that. But fighting from a horse in combat will. Then obviously athletics is your ability to move around on foot. And tracking is, if we're to take the Warband example, your ability to kind of keep track of party movement around you, to have an idea of how large a party is and how far away they are, or how recently they passed through a particular area. This one I think is, at least at surface level, seems like it's going to be very similar to its Warband counterpart. Then we have the more intelligence-based stuff. So tactics, crafting, and roguery. We don't know, or at least I don't know what roguery could be. I can speculate. Tactics is your ability to command in battle, as opposed to like strategy down here, which is your ability to command outside of battle. So tactics is probably going to be, I don't know. It's difficult because they haven't shown us a lot of the perks, and so it's hard to say. Well, actually, they haven't even shown us a lot of the descriptions for these various skills. So it's hard to say what exactly this will affect, but I think it will be your ability to command in battle, whatever that means. I don't know if they're going to like limit which formations you can use based on your tactics skill. I would doubt that. I think that would be a poor choice to limit your options just because you have bad tactics skill. But maybe it's how likely your troops are to break, stuff like that. Crafting is, of course, going to lead into the new crafting mechanics they have, where we can, make our own weapons, and I'm sure there's probably some other stuff thrown in there as well. The only thing I can think of for roguery is we do know that it's possible to set up criminal operations in like the back streets of towns, and I think this particular skill is going to govern a lot of that. But it may also be your ability to like infiltrate. So in like Warband, if you were trying to enter a hostile enemy castle or town, you had to kind of sneak in, and it was a bit vague as to how it calculated your success. I read into it quite a bit trying to see how I could be more successful at it, and I got the impression that it was really just dependent on your party size. And so if you went alone, there was a good chance you got in, but if you, brought your entire 200-man army with you, there was a good chance you were going to get caught. So it could be stuff like that as well, but it's very hard to say because it's not like Skyrim where you're going to be pickpocketing people or picking locks, at least not that I'm aware. Then we get into the more charisma. Well, actually no, this kind of bounces back and forth. So these at least are going to be a little bit more charismatic, although stewardship is probably more intelligence based. Trade is probably a 50-50 split. But this is going to be like your persuasion skill. I think this is going to be your management, especially of your fiefs and properties. So I imagine you would level that up by maybe purchasing a property and then having it turn a profit. And I'm sure this would give you some various bonuses to that. We do know that the fief system is highly changed from Warband, where you can build very specific things within your fiefs, such as like a stud farm where you'll be able to produce horses from that. And so I imagine a lot of the perks in this particular skill are going to be related to those types of things. Trade is your ability to deal with other merchants, and we do know from something they've said in an interview that you will only actually level your trade skill if you are turning a profit in your dealings with merchants. So it's not enough to just buy and sell. You need to buy something at one price and then sell it to a different merchant. Well, I don't think it necessarily has to be a different merchant, but one would assume you would need to sell that for more than you bought it, and that would level up your trade skills. So you actually need to be making money trading, not just buying and selling at random. Strategy is going to be the more logistical side of your party management. So your ability to like keep your people fed, your ability to, I would think like pathfinding, for example, might fall under there. Sorry about that, a helicopter just flew very low over my house. Anyways, strategy is your ability to kind of manage your party. So keeping them fed, keeping them moving and moving efficiently. Surgeon is your ability to treat wounds. So sort of all three of the first aid, wound treatment, and surgery from Warband are probably all folded into here. And rather than having like one for in combat to prevent death, and then one for healing random characters outside of battle, and one for healing companions outside of battle, it's probably just a general healing skill, and then there's different perks that allow you to kind of focus it on what you want to do. And then engineering is obviously your ability to build stuff more structurally than, like, say, crafting. So not building a sword, building like a building or a siege equipment. And I think that will play out similar to how it does in Warband, where if you want to build something within a fief, your engineering skill will dictate, or your party's engineering skill will dictate how quickly that gets done. It will also dictate how fast you're able to set up a siege. It may also determine what options you have during a siege. I could see them limiting certain types of siege engines to parties or characters with high engineering. So if you have very low engineering, it might take you a very long time to set up, and you're only going to have the most basic siege engines. But if you have really good engineers in your party, you might have, the full gambit of siege engines, and you'd be able to set up really fast. Don't know until we hear more, but I could see that being a thing. Alright, so those are the various skills. Let's go back over here and read a little bit more about the other mechanics. So now we have perks. perks, as the name suggests, give your character certain bonuses. These bonuses could be anything from an increase in party size to extra ammunition in battles, or they even unlock certain actions, such as the ability to reload any crossbow while on horseback. Players are unable to unlock all of the perks, and in many cases, a choice will have to be made about which perks that you would like to choose. In the end, perks act as a great way for players to customize their character to match their playstyle. Alright, so back over here to get a better look at this. This area right here, hopefully you guys can see my mouse cursor. It's possible that you can't. But right dead in the center, under the description of the skill, we can see the perk tree. And there is a bar. It's sort of a tree and a bar, in that there is this little threshold that moves. So, for example, we're looking at the riding skill right now. And if we look over to the left, we can see that the riding skill is 3, and that corresponds to, 30. And then if we look over here in the center, we can see that it's 30 over here as well. And so, what happens is, like your proficiencies, as you use these, like your proficiencies in Warband, I should specify, in Bannerlord, as you use these skills, they will progress, and they will they will slide to the right as you gain more. And when the threshold of that skill surpasses a perk, that perk will become available. Now, they don't mention any sort of perk point that you need to spend in order to acquire these. So the way that I have come to understand it is, once the threshold surpasses that skill, you will be able to select that skill. You just click it, or it might just unlock automatically, and you now have that perk. However, in the case where there are 2 perks within that same line, so, you know, one on top, one on bottom, when the threshold surpasses that, you will have to choose between the 2 options. So you cannot choose both. At least that is the way that I have come to understand it. So you will have to choose to some degree, but also it seems like some of these are fairly linear, although later on in the blog we'll get to see the one-handed skill tree, and it is pretty much choices all up and down the line. So this one is a little bit more linear than that one. So that is perks. Now then, just above the perk tree is the character leveling bar. As you increase your skills, your character will fill up the bar. Once the bar is completely filled, your character will level up, and you will be rewarded with 2 extra focus points. These focus points can then be invested in different skills. Okay, so what they're referring to is up here at the top under her name. That bar shows your XP, and we can see that she is currently level 5. She has no skill points to spend, and it looks like she is just barely level 5 because she doesn't seem to have accumulated any XP in that bar. Now then, skill focus points, what they briefly mentioned. So it's important to note that we will gain 2 extra focus points for every level up. We'll get into that in just a second. So skill focus allows your character to gain experience at a faster rate for that particular skill. However, once you invest a skill point into a focus, then it is permanently locked in. So these are permanent choices. To gain skill points in any of the skills, you need to have made an initial investment of focus points, meaning that skills that are shown as level 0 and have no focus points invested in them cannot progress, no matter how much you practice them. And that is what bothered me, I think, the most about this system. So let's look at the bigger picture here again. We can see that she is level 5, and I've counted these ahead of time, but I'll quickly go through them again just so you trust me. We have 3, 6, 7, 12, 13 perk point, or focus points, excuse me, spent. She's level 5, so that means she's leveled up 4 times. So from level 1 to level 2 is once, level 2 to level 3 is twice, level 3 to level 4 is 3 times, and then 4 to 5 is the 4th time. So she's leveled up 4 times to become level 5. That means that she has accumulated 8 focus points on top of what she was initially given. 13 minus 8 leaves us with 5 focus points to start with. So when you create your character, they're going to give you 5 focus points to choose from. This is important because they said that without an initial focus point investment, you cannot level up a skill, no matter how often you do it. So, initially starting out, there's only going to be 5 skills that you can actually level, which I kind of have a problem with, because what that does is that is going to force you to, out of the gate, really determine what type of character you want to build. Now, every time you level up, you're going to get 2 more, and eventually you'll have accumulated enough where you could conceivably put 1 focus point into every single skill. There are, what, 9, so 18 skills, which means that you would probably need to hit, like, what, level 10? In order to have enough to have put 1 into every single one of these. But that is 1 out of potential 10 focus. So if you wanted to really experiment with every possible skill in this game, you would be severely handicapping yourself, because your main combat skill should have several focus points invested. Because the more focus points invested, the faster that skill is going to level up. And so if you decided, you know, I'm new to Mountain Blade, Bannerlord's my first time playing Mountain Blade, I kind of just want to get a feel for all the different types of combat. Well, to start out, you don't even have enough focus points to spec into every type of combat. So you could maybe do 3, maybe you decide you just want to do melee, so you can do 1 into each type of melee combat, and then you have 2 left for every other skill. And then you decide, well, I really like polearms, so I just wasted the other 2. Because these are permanent, you can't take them back. They said it's permanent investment. So yeah, you've spec'd into all 3, but you know, obviously you might decide to use multiple forms of combat. You know, maybe you're going to use like a halberd with a one-handed arming sword as a backup. You know, fair enough. In that case, it's not totally wasted, but the chances of you using all 3 of these is very slim. The chances of you using all 3 of these is also very slim. And the chance of you using all 6 in one character is basically none, because you just wouldn't have enough equipment slots to have every type of weapon. Frankly, you would be severely limited with, you know, ranged weapons, because with the bow and the crossbow, at least, you have to carry the weapon and the ammunition, so that's already half of your equipment slots. So that leaves you with like a sword or a shield or a sword and a halberd and then a bow and arrows or something. But there's no way you could use all of these, and so if you wanted to invest into each one just to try them and get a feel for what suits you best, you're wasting a bunch of focus points that are somewhat limited. And I don't really like that. What I think I would like to see, and I think this makes more sense, is if you're familiar with RimWorld, which you might very well be if you follow my channel, because I play a ton of it, is in RimWorld, skill progression is dictated by a passion system. And so what happens is you either have no passion, you have some passion, or you have a bunch of passion. So it's a little bit more simplistic than this. But the way it works is if you have no passion, you still can progress in that skill. You just gain XP at 35% of the normal rate. So even if you don't like doing something, even if you have no desire to do it, you're still going to get better at it. Even if you are a terrible surgeon, you have no desire to become a surgeon, but you do surgery, over the course of all those surgeries, you're going to be better at the end than you were at the beginning. And that's true in real life. That should be true in video games. So I think that would work a little bit better for the uninvested skills. Still let them progress, but have them progress at a penalized rate. And then when you, in RimWorld, when you have some passion, or like the one little flame, you gain XP at 100%. And so have that be the initial investment. So uninvested skills with no focus points, 35%, or, you know, whatever penalty you decide. And then once you invest, you get 100. And then maybe for each focus point you invest in that skill, you get another 10% or something. So if I have 2 points, I get 100 plus 10. So I get like 110%, or something like that. But I think completely removing the ability to level skills that don't have focus points is severely penalizing, especially to newer players that don't really know what they want to look at. And even somebody like me who has over 1,000 hours in Warband, Bannerlord is still a new game, and a lot of these skills are new 2 Mountain Blades, so I don't know if I'm going to particularly want to invest in Stewardship. I don't even really know what Stewardship does. And so it might turn out in the, the progress of my campaign that I have a lot of fiefs to manage, and it would have really helped if I had invested in this Stewardship skill, but because I really wanted to try different forms of combat, I just didn't have the points free to do that. And so there's no re-rolling your character, there's no respecking. I'm kind of just screwed, and I've built this suboptimal character now. And so that's my biggest gripe with this system, I think. But I didn't want to spend nearly so much time talking about it, so let's move on. Let me know what you guys think about this system, because I don't necessarily mind the fact that it's forcing you to build a focused character. You can't just be the best at everything, which in Warband it was sort of possible to do. It was difficult, but you could make a very, very well-rounded character. Here, there's more skills going on, and there's more hampering you from investing into those, so it is preventing you from that. But I think it forces you to spec too early, and you either know what you want to do with that character or you suffer for it. And I think especially for newer players, or for the first couple of playthroughs, even for experienced players, it's going to be very punishing. Right, so back over here. Let's see. This is one of the companions. I think they're just showing here that this also applies to your companions. When you go to level up your companions, you get the exact same screen. It just shows them and their name instead of you and your name. So, all of this applies to companions in your party too, which players have total control over. Your companions can perform specific roles within your party, such as Quartermaster, Scout, or Surgeon. Once you assign a companion to a role, you will start gaining bonuses from skills and perks that are attached to that role. Now, I like this and I do not like this, and I'll explain why on both of those. This is something that I've always role-played in my Let's Plays. I would have a character that had high engineering skill, and they would be like my engineer. I'd put them at the bottom of the party so they never saw combat. They were just there to build my siege engines. Or my, I don't know, my mill and my fiefs or whatever. Or, for example, I would have somebody with really high trade skill and like looting, and they would be my quartermaster. And again, put them at the bottom of the party so they're not actually seeing combat, keeping them alive, or keeping them conscious, and making sure that those bonuses are always conferred. But their, high trade skill would make me make more money when I sold stuff off, and their high loot skill would ensure that I had plenty to pick from after a battle. What they've done here is they've made those into set roles. However, in Warband, any character that had those skills beyond a certain degree, I forget what the threshold is, would be contributing to your party. So you could have 5 characters with high engineering skill, and all of them would be contributing to your party's effectiveness in engineering. What they're saying here is that, at least this is the impression I've got based on this sentence. So once you assign a companion to a role, you will start gaining bonuses from skills and perks that are attached to that role. That implies to me that you will not gain any bonuses or anything from skills or perks attached to that role. So any companion with high engineering skill will have no effect on your party unless they are assigned to the engineering role. And as far as I can tell, there is only one position for each of these. So you're going to have a dedicated engineer, and he's going to be the only engineer. You can't have the player character. Well, I don't know if the player character can factor in here. It's possible the player character might be able to, but again, the player character is very limited now. So you might have, a companion that you've basically maxed out his combat, and you figure, what the hell, let's give him some engineering skill just to speed things along. Well, he's not going to be able to contribute because only the person in that role can actually contribute these bonuses. And the same goes for Surgeon, Quartermaster, Sergeant, and Scout. I don't know what Sergeant would be, maybe training? I would think it'd be more of a training role. But it could be a couple of things, maybe tactics as well. Scouting is, I think, pretty straightforward. They'll probably be very good at, well, pathfinding is gone. So I would think maybe strategy and tracking would be useful there. But it says that you're gaining bonuses from skills and perks that are attached to that role. So it's only the ones that they've decided go along with that. So they might just decide that it's one skill for each. So Scout is tracking. Sergeant is tactics, maybe, I don't know, because most of the training skills are folded into the associated combat skills. So bow training is within the bow skill now, one-handed is within the one-handed, and so on. So yeah, like quartermaster was probably going to be it could be trade, it could be strategy, because we know that strategy is covering logistics. Obviously engineer is going to get engineering and surgeon will have surgeon, but the others aren't so clear. This, I do think, is sort of a step in the right direction. I like that you can assign people to these roles. I like that they're actually a thing in the game now and not just like a headcanon type thing. But I don't like how severely limited they are again. We're kind of falling back into the same trap that we saw with the character progression, where yes, they've improved it, but they've also really, really sort of like brought it to a laser focus. And I'm worried that that's going to take a lot of the freedom out of the Mount and Blade series, because Warband had a ton of freedom. And it seems like in Bannerlord they're going a little bit in the other direction. They're really trying to get you to like hone down what you're trying to do. And so again, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I'm a bit torn, because I like that roles are there. I don't like the entirety of how they've been implemented. And so, again, at the beginning I mentioned that there was stuff I liked and stuff I didn't like. I think I've covered pretty much all of that. So let me know what you guys think of these changes. I think overall the character screen is a vast improvement. It's definitely more aesthetically pleasing. I don't know how I feel about some of the stuff until I actually get my hands on it, but I definitely don't like the fact that skills without any focus cannot be leveled. I think that's unrealistic. I imagine it's not that big a difference from like a game balance perspective. If you're gaining XP at like 35%, you're never going to significantly alter these. But if it turns out you're doing something quite frequently, it'd be nice to, well, A, benefit from that, and then B, have some indication. So as it stands right now, if I don't focus into trade, like no investment in terms of focus points, I might be trading and successfully trading really often. And if I had focused in that, I might have had like a huge trading skill already. But the thing is, I would never know that because I didn't put the point in, so it's never going to grow. And I think for a new player, that could be really bad, because they don't necessarily know, oh, I'm doing this all the time and I'm actually like really good at it, but my character is not, because I didn't, you know, put the magic points in the slots. So I think that's just bad game design right there. I think that's a really poor choice. I think they could have done it better, but everything else about the system, I think I'm pretty happy with. The same goes for this. There are a couple things that I'm not pleased with, but overall I do think it's a step in the right direction. So what do you guys think? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Are you a bit mixed feeling about it like I am? Let me know in the comments below, but otherwise, I think I've talked long enough. So thank you so much for watching. I had a great time. Actually, one last thing. I'm not going to cover every single like interview and gameplay video that comes out of Gamescom. There's just too much, because they basically let everybody who played the demo record footage. And a lot of it is completely new information. It's stuff that we've already seen. But I'm going to try to find stuff that is new and unique and cover that. If you find anything that you feel free to let me know in the comments of any of my Bannerlord videos. Try to keep it on a Bannerlord video. But honestly, wherever is fine, I guess. But yeah, if you find a video that you think is you know, worthwhile to look at and has some information that may not have been covered elsewhere, or at least some unique looks at things, maybe we get to see like some new Imperial units that we hadn't seen before or something. If you find anything like that, feel free to let me know in the comments below. You can send me a link to the video. If YouTube flags it, I'll unflag it. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time talking about some Bannerlord with you, as I always do. And I look forward to seeing you guys back here for my next Bannerlord video.